Hi, Amanda. I saw you in pictures. I thought that gal shows up a lot at all of these positive approach to care opportunities. And so I snuck around, found out who you were, and a very nice person at your office said, "We'll take care of that." But you were the first one to say, "Yes, I will." And I'm so glad that you came today and that these other people either know of you or have used your materials. They may have taken a course and they now have a plaque on their wall. So, Amanda, this is your venue. Enjoy your friends here. And if we do get comments from people watching live, I'll probably greet them for a moment every once in a while when you need to take a breath.
Sounds good. Oh, I'm so glad to be here, Christine, and all of these friends. Oh my gosh, I was not expecting this entourage to show up with you, Christine. You've got quite a crew. Really incredible group of folks. I am excited to kind of answer some of the questions that have cropped up. Many of you, whether you're watching or whether you're here in this room with us, you've got your own background. You've got a lot of things that you bring to the table. And Teepa Snow, who happens to be my mom, but also one of my guiding lights here, trying to figure out how do we change this world of dementia. Uh, she comes to people in different ways. And so these questions could be all over the map. And I cannot guarantee I will have answers. And I can guarantee that we will address it and follow up and make sure that we find your answer because there is one. Nothing is hopeless. And that's our message to the world. So I'm so excited to be here.
Nothing is hopeless. As much joy as all these people have experienced, finding that key that unlocks a moment or a particular challenge or speaks to a family who is starting to feel hopeless when the diagnosis is dementia. As much as that is a positive, someone who is going to watch this in the future is coming in feeling like they just hit me with something. I don't know what's next. And whew, they can land on those soft feathers that I see at Positive Approach to Care. The feathers have become a symbol there, and go, okay, I can take a step forward, including the person who has been told this is determining your trajectory. It's just great. I'm gonna mute myself because somebody here, even if you've asked Amanda this question before, we won't know. So you can ask her about something you know she's got an answer for it. You know, it makes her look good. And speaking of looking good, Patty, can we hear you? Yes, we can.
Hello, everyone. So sorry I'm late. How's everybody doing today?
Good. Well, thanks. How are you?
Excellent, excellent.
You came in at the perfect spot, but I will not make you come up with a question first. Although you may have a whole list in front of you. I don't know. Patty, I'm glad that you and Nikki, Kitty, and Laura are still speaking to me, even though I've moved over the border. We have all been Oregonians together or come back to Oregon together. Laurette, you are unmuted. What would you like to talk about?
Oh, if I had to ask, well, I'm not an Oregonian, but if I had to ask a question of Amanda, I probably would know the answer to this already. Perhaps for people who are tuning in and don't know much about the positive approach to care, how would you encapsulate that? What would you say in a nutshell about PAC?
Wow, great question. And yeah, it's a mouthful. Positive approach to care is a very long name that came many years ago after Tipa, who is the founder and creator of our organization, was out doing work with Melanie Bunn, another amazing woman in our local North Carolina area, with the Alzheimer's Association of North Carolina Eastern Chapter. And they started to go out and do these talks, but they weren't doing talks like everybody else was doing talks. They were making people do stuff. It's called experiential learning, and Tipa is sort of a master at it. And that's the piece that really was different. When you go to her talks, you're laughing, you're crying, you're touching your neighbor who you may or may not know. You maybe didn't come with them. Often someone gets their pants taken off. Now, not all the way. Usually it's just actually touching the belt. These real life experiences that happen in the world of dementia that nobody talks about, nobody brings out into the public, nobody wants anybody to know about. And she just does it up there on stage with everybody watching in a way of destigmatizing this thing that is so prevalent in so many people's lives. And so that was the basis of this company, was her and Melanie learning together about and from and with people who were living with dementia. The way that we care cannot be that we force them to take showers and we force medication and we force these things. There's got to be a different way to do it. And together, and Tipa on her own, using her occupational therapy background, realized it does matter how I approach someone. So many, many moons ago in 2007, she created this organization, Positive Approach to Care, which teaches her positive physical approach. How do you bring two bodies close together without causing distress and alarm? How do you get permission when someone doesn't have language? And how do you make this feel better? How do I bring value and purpose back into someone's life, even with a diagnosis? And so that was kind of the core principles. And since then, man, we've been working hard to radically transform the experience of dementia through this experiential learning, through webinars, through videos, through working with our local folks through our Snow Approach Foundation, which is a new nonprofit that we've kind of built upon the principles of positive approach to care. So if you're looking for an exact answer, I don't have one, because we do all of those pieces in everything we do. No matter who you are, which audience you're part of, Tipa has explored something in support of and with others like you. And our biggest goal is just to get it out in the open and start talking about it, start having those conversations. So great question. Thanks for that one.
Destigmatizing. Hey, Melvin Hall is watching live and says he's in New York State. I know that's not where he lives because I've met him in person recently. And so has Scott. I do like to say that my hubby producer is D. Scott Smith, motivational listener. He came in just in time, I think, to hear about the pants coming down. So I think he's going to stay with us through the hour. I agree with that. I think there is one thing I think that in front of the right group, to wear like all one color, like pink, and make myself be the person who could use an opportunity to get a little cleaned up and then pull that poor unsuspecting person from the, seated in the room feeling safe, have them come over and try to get me clean, and have someone like, Amanda and Kitty and Laura and Patty and Nikki and Laurette, be able to come over and say, and here's a different way that you could approach that, because I could do like I could take personalities that I served as a hired caregiver in their individual homes, people who are aging in place, and put together, Marilyn, the one who's like, what do you think you're doing? Even though I'm used to know you, all that. So I'm looking for someone else who might be, yay, Kitty, you already.
Yeah. So earlier you said, Amanda, that you're Tipa's daughter. Okay, I did not know that. I am a super fan. I got to see your mom. I think it was the second year of taking care of my mom. She came to the McGinty conference in Oregon, and that was the first person that I was like, okay, this I understand, because we're also laughing and we're also using humor to get through this. Not to the success that your mother was, but we learned a little bit better. But I wanted to ask you, besides the fact that this is kind of the family business, I know that your mom had some experience with dementia early on, and then she went on to make a career in occupational therapy. What brought you to this journey? Was there personal experience also, or was it just like, wow, I grew up with this and I want to be a part of this?
Wow, great question. So, a little bit of all of the above, right? So, anybody who grew up with parents who are kind of in the spotlight, but not really, because she's like, I would say she's the most reluctant celebrity I think I've ever met, right? We have people coming up to us I remember as a teenager, people would come up to us in like Whole Foods or Home Depot, and we one time went in the restroom in a grocery store, and they were like, "Oh my gosh, Tipa Snow." It's bizarre, but also it's for all the right reasons. And I was not going to follow in her footsteps, and I for sure was not going to follow in my family history of becoming a teacher. And lo and behold, I became a teacher. And I was an elementary school teacher for many years. And I loved it. I loved the work. And then I got into administration and thinking, okay, I can make changes that are bigger than a single classroom, a single child. I can change how a school operates. And at the same time, she had been building certification courses for positive approach to care, teaching other people some of those gifts of experiential learning through her trainer certification, through her coach certification. How do you teach people the skills, but also build new habits? It's not hard to teach people the new skill. It's hard to make them practice it so that it becomes a habit. It's so easy to go back to old ways of doing it, even if you know it'll work. Even when you see her do it, she makes it look super easy too. So these new awkward, uncomfortable skills, she started to build these certification courses. Happened to be around the same time that I was moving into more of an administrative mindset. And so I took her coach certification course. And I got to say, I just got hooked. The content was so good. As many of you, if you've seen her present, it is funny and it is engaging and it's also real. And she takes the brain and makes it so understandable. I mean, I am currently now in our nonprofit teaching 6 to 12-year-olds this content. And they are saying things like amygdala and hippocampus and what does the prefrontal cortex do? It helps you think. And it is so cool how she took this really complicated thing of the brain, dementia, and then the relationships around it, because that's the bigger piece that we're all experiencing. And what she did with that was take it to the next step of how do I make it so that everybody can understand and do something different. And the challenge that a lot of people say is, well, can you dumb it down? And I'm like, well, what's cool with her content is you don't have to. So in 2015, I took that course. I decided, wow, this is what I want to do. It uses enough of my teaching skill and my administrative skill. And oh, she's doing all of these things. She's booking flights for everybody. She's creating manuals. She's printing things and putting them on the table for I think I could help with the organization of this course and the organization of the company. And so then I became COO after joining as a mentor to help people through certification. So pretty fun journey. And many of our products involve pictures of me at a much younger age. I think one of our toolkits, our GEMS toolkit, is me at 14 doing hand under hand in the pictures on the bottom of the tool. So that's kind of fun, and also it is the teenage self going, oh Lord. But it's been an interesting journey to get here, and super glad that I took that time to experience the certification course, because I don't think I would have been able to leave teaching behind until I saw the kind of teaching that we get to do here at Positive Approach to Care. And it's life-changing for people and for me too. So yeah, love that question.
So I see Laurette unmuted. You heard it here, You heard it here first, folks. Amanda, how did you get to this point? Well, I wasn't going to. And what a difference between a learned skill, being inspired, going, yes, that makes sense, and getting it to the point where that's your fallback, even when it's 3:30 in the morning. And well, I maybe shouldn't even use the word fallback, because that's part of, but getting it to the point where it is your habit, and you realize there's the rhythm. There's something that's going to really save both of us in our relationship through all this. I'm just going to say, when you want to say something, unmute and start talking. Laurette, you're the only one. So at this moment, but you guys are being very polite, and you all get to go out for recess 2 minutes early. And Amanda's laughing. I'm really glad, because this is the way I am. Yeah, you want to say something? Just say it.
Well, Amanda, the first time I met your mom was probably about 2007, maybe 2008 or something. And she came out to Oregon, where our memory care was having, brought her out to speak. And she was absolutely so different from any, trainer that we had ever encountered before. It was absolutely and just like you're saying, it made everything so understandable, both from like how the brain functions, but then like with the experiential stuff that you're talking about, absolutely. And it feels like, to me, I feel like my whole life I've been doing dementia care for about 25 years now, and a huge bulk of it is just saying like, okay, imagine how you would feel if this was happening to you. That's how they feel. And it feels kind of silly to keep saying it over and over, but it feels like it's an aha moment for every time I say it to people, or at least walk them through that process of, feeling the feelings, because, dementia really doesn't change it. Yeah, obviously it changes some things, but it doesn't change kind of who we are as people. It just makes it more complicated to meet our needs and that type of thing. So, yeah, I mean, just to kind of recognize and second what you're saying, she's absolutely, and obviously now it's just like the queen of all of this. And I don't, I now do dementia like education, but I don't even like, there's no point in trying to do anything around, she's already like hit it. I'm not going to do anything better than what she's doing in that arena. I focus mainly on what are our needs as humans, and how can we meet those. But some of the things like the hand under hand that you mentioned is absolutely game changing. And I struggle sometimes on knowing how to express that to people without, like I've been writing some courses for some different companies and that type of thing. And I want to express like, okay, how do you do this and I kind of struggle with that. It's like, well, go look, Google Teepa Snow and figure and hand under hand, or I could kind of describe the process using like possibly, terms that aren't exactly hand under hand or whatnot. But I'm curious if you have any, easy to point to resources as far as how to just get that information to the people who need it.
Yeah, and I mean, huge kudos to you, Laura, doing that. Seeing it from the other side was one of our very first video series that so vital because I was with her. We were in London this summer when she did this piece that I hadn't seen her do before of imagine there's just this line in the sand that as soon as you go in for that appointment, as soon as you go and get that diagnosis, suddenly the world thinks that you're this totally different human being. And reality is it's just not how dementia works. Today I'm living with dementia. Tomorrow I get my diagnosis, and guess what? I'm still living with dementia, almost exactly the same as yesterday, believe it or not. The diagnosis does help me and my family, or me and my person, or me, start to at least have a name for it. And right now, the diagnosis process is so hard because diagnosis, the end, those are the two pieces that often get shared with people. And the life in between is what you're also working to help people see. There's a way to live life really differently. And yes, we need to acknowledge that there will be losses. 100%. There will be language loss for almost all types of dementia. There may be judgment and reasoning loss for many types of dementia, and those may happen really early on. And memory loss may or may not happen early on for many types of dementia. And these sort of myths that are out there of what it looks like to have dementia is sort of really challenging for so many of us because in our mind's eye, we see someone sitting, someone who's medicated, someone who's been restrained in a way that makes them manageable. And that's just not dementia anymore. And yet it's really hard to get that image out of the public eye when we still are saying things like people living with dementia or people with dementia are aggressive. It's just simply not true. You're right. People living with dementia are more reactive often because impulse control in the prefrontal cortex is no longer functioning. And if you know that, man, how would it change how close you got? How you said things, where you stood, how you stood. If I stand like this, is it different than if I stand like this? And the idea that there is a different way if you're willing to switch places, if you're willing to go into that space and see it how the other person might see me. Now, when it comes to teaching these techniques or learning them for yourselves, I love that you asked that question because the pandemic did a lot of great things, right? It did a lot of terrible things, and it did a lot of great things when it comes to online learning and freeing up and opening up learning that can be done from home. And so one of the pieces that we added during the pandemic was some online certification courses and some online champion courses. So our champion courses are taught by our mentors who've worked with Teepa, and they teach the basics of what's changing in the brain, why is someone doing what they're doing, but most importantly, where most of the time is spent, is on learning those skills, the positive physical approach, hand under hand, learning about the gyms and how do I adapt my approach when someone's sleeping or when they don't want me in their space. And it really takes it from the start to the finish of Champion 1 is all about approach, Champion 2 is all about hand under hand support, Champion 3 and 4 are about the gems, which is Teepa's model to talk about progression. How will this progress? How will it shift and change? So many people talk about, like I said, the beginning, which is often 10 to 15 years into the journey, the beginning, diagnosis, the end, death, and nothing in between. So this fills in the gaps. What will it look like? What will I retain? What skills will I still have and what will I lose so that we can know and be prepared to provide the skill that someone's missing. So that willingness to switch places is how we teach everything, along with the experiential learning. And if you want to actually teach those skills, right? That's what I hear you saying, Laura, is like, I want to be able to like show it to people, and I want to get the license to do that because it is TIPA's content and it is licensed. We actually have 5 certification courses that allow you to do that piece. And so many of them are offered right here in Hillsboro, and you can come and hang out with me and TIPA. And TIPA's at a lot of our courses teaching these skills that she created so many years ago. And a lot of the work that we've been doing recently is to update and up-level some of our online content. So we've been working with Dementia Alliance of North Carolina, who was the original Alzheimer's Association Eastern chapter that TIPA and Melanie used to work with. 20 years later, they refilmed footage from Accepting the Challenge. We just have it almost ready to go. And people all over the country, all over the world, will be able to access that 3 hours of new and updated content, which was the very first and only DVD to include people living with dementia as part of the teaching, as part of this process, because there really shouldn't be any teaching done without the people living in this condition. So we really believe in teaching with and doing with, not doing to. So hand under hand is TIPA's technique that helps connect your brain and my brain to do things differently. And what's really cool is we figured out how to teach it on Zoom thanks to one of our mentors. I'll give her a shout out, Jess up in Canada, Jess Pelkey. So if you take your left hand, everybody go ahead and take your left hand, hold it out in front of you, and imagine it's a hand. So this is your thumb. Your pinky becomes your thumb. So put your pinky up. Good. Now take your right hand and shake hands with yourself as if you're thumb to thumb. And then you can shift up and under, and boom, you're in hand under hand. How cool is that? We learned to do it on Zoom during COVID. So thanks again to Jess Pelkey. We really do want everybody to do this, to teach this, to learn this. I hope I never, ever hear again, man, I wish I would have known. I wish I would have known about this. I wish I would have found you before. I wish I would have. The more people that we have like you, Laura, sharing it out, teaching it, we can teach you how to teach it. Come and see us. And I would love to never hear that phrase again. That would be my dream.
Yeah. Anne-Marie Dacus says that she's at an honest mechanic shop. There is one. It is just 2 hours from where I live in Houston, Texas. So you can all get a hold of Anne-Marie Dacus for that. But mostly she has supported in the comments aspects of aging, the name of this gathering, which is now noon Central on Mondays, for the resource website Aging Better Network. And she has been in that column. She's always going somewhere to be of assistance, to provide caregiving, to make what I say is restoring humanity in a situation. I hope someday she has a moment, an hour to come and tell us about some of her experiences. But she is loving these. These are people. I have been willing to switch places, and that is a great way to say it. I know that my being a female, that there can be a very reluctant person who is a male, and it changes the narrative for both when words are said like, if the roles were reversed and I was the one that needed you, I know that you would take good care and that you would give me dignity. And that's why I'm here. And it just seems to make the difference. And I'm like, who knows? But that I would be the one who is reliant and trusting. And you showed us with the pinky up about that. But I just wanted to make sure that we said hello to Anne-Marie as well. Maybe she is hoping they will get finished so she can get to her next client.
I have a question for Amanda. Hi, everybody. It's nice to see you. Laura, I do highly recommend, and anybody else, to take one of those courses, or as many as you can or want. I was lucky enough to take the engagement leader course with Lorette, actually, and Tave, Mirador's co-founder, earlier in June, and it was completely amazing. Like, I still think about it. Amanda was there, and Tipa was there, and some of the other fantastic PAC mentors like Alejandro and Casey, and it was an amazing experience to get to spend those 3 days. And then, having to, go through scenarios, and it was super uncomfortable. But it was very affirming in that the way that some simple maneuvers, like just some simple changes in behavior approach, can really make a huge difference. Even in role playing, you can feel that. So it was very cool. One of the things that you touched on, Amanda, about that I've always been really, I think, is such a great aspect of PAC is, I've been following and listening and watching since about 2017. And you had mentioned that you guys had gone back and refilmed things from 20 years past. One of the things I really like about Tipa's teaching and PAC in general is that there is this, there's this non-resistance, I guess I would say, like this ability to continue to learn and continue to try out new techniques and continue to, you have this amazing program. And yet, even in these last few years that I've been watching, I've seen adjustments to language, adjustments to behaviors. And I think that's really cool. And I really appreciate it, because we are always learning new things. And it's nice to see somebody at the top of the field continuing also to model that we are still learning. So I guess my question, that's an appreciation, but it's also a question. So when you do come across new whatevers, how do you integrate that into PAC? Or what, I guess, maybe it's a behind the scenes, like what is the process of that? It's like, oh, we've learned something new. How will it adapt to PAC standards?
Wow, great question. So first of all, everybody do this. And do it again. And one more time. So it's actually proven that if you do that 5 times a day, you will lower your stress hormone called cortisol by 50%. And Nikki, when we get changes, when we see new wording, when our folks who are living with dementia who are part of our team, our core team, say, ooh, actually, we're going to say it like this now. Listen, I appreciate that you guys were using PWLD as a shortened form of people living with dementia. Feels like an acronym. I don't want to be an acronym. Every time something like that happens, a change needs to be made. In fact, our value system, our hand that we created when we came up with our values at PAC, is that we are relationships based on authenticity, curiosity, compassion, and empowerment. And then we were on a conversation with someone, and he said, you really can't empower someone. You can't give someone power unless you took it in the first place. And we went, because Tipa was on that call. And as soon as she hears something like that, I know we're going to have to go through a lot of changes. And it's always important to connect and take a deep breath before we think about the next steps, because that's the thing about her, is that you're absolutely right. She's always listening, always researching, always looking out to make sure that we're not in direct competition with ourselves and things that we would have said or did. Now, some of our videos are older and they say things like demented. You would never hear any of our team say it now. And it's still pretty common vernacular out there. And so how do we shift it? Piece by piece, bite by bite, starts with a recognition a few deep breaths, and then starting the process. And then as soon as somebody brings it to us, oh, hey, did you guys know it still says it here? Okay, let's go through the change process. So we actually have a team of about 20 folks who are full-time or part-time with Positive Approach to Care all over the country. And then we have independent contractors who are a lot of our mentors who work on the courses or who take you through certification in a one-on-one capacity afterwards, who are all over the world. We have about 25 to 40 at any given time. And our goal really is to just stay up on it and change it as we notice differences that need to be made. What is the new language? What are we being asked to say from folks who are living with dementia, from folks who are living with brain change? That's even a change that we're making, because not everybody who appreciates TIPA's content is under the umbrella of dementia. And yet, man, isn't it still helpful for folks who are living with autism or folks who are living with Down, but not yet Alzheimer's. So there's all these really interesting connections and ties that, yeah, we work really hard as an organization to not be frustrated by the levels of changes that need to happen, that happen daily. When I started with PAC in 2015, which is still many years after it started, I started doing some speaking engagements, and I would say, okay, well, let me ask you guys, how many types, forms, causes of dementia are there right now? Anyone have a guess? And I'll give you a hint if you guess and it's too low or too high. I'll help you out.
Is it around 30?
Higher?
I was going
It's
to say,
over
isn't it like
100.
between like 80 to 120 right now?
Nice, yeah. So we currently, I know, Christine, isn't that just like blow your mind? So we now say, this year, we say over 120 different types, causes, and forms of dementia, and some researchers say over 200. And so that's where we are now. In 2015, I was saying over 50, because that was the current number that we were talking about. So a lot of this has happened in the last few years, which is why it's hard to keep up with and why it's hard to know where to look for the newest and the best and the most accurate. We still say about 90 to 95% of people out there think dementia is the same as Alzheimer's, which is the same as memory problems. How many memory-related names are there for dementia care? Dementia is not the same as Alzheimer's. It's definitely not the same as memory problems. Anybody who has worked with or lived with or been living with themselves dementia, you know it's a lot more than that. Dementia is an umbrella term. Alzheimer's is a type of dementia, and memory problems are a symptom often associated under Alzheimer's, which is a type of dementia. And then there are other brain changes that don't fit under the umbrella of dementia that can still benefit from TIPA's teachings and research. So yeah, Nikki, it's one of the best things that we do and also one of the most frustrating things that we do, because it's constantly evolving and changing. And the more we're learning, the newer dementias are actually for younger, even children, dementias. We're exploring and finding so much more as research grows. There's just so much more that we don't know. I would say that's probably true about all health care related worlds. The more we learn, the more research is done, the more we're like, ooh, maybe we should put that back on, because that was a lot more than we were thinking was under that lid. But yeah, that's how we do it, is we work as a team, but first we take a lot of deep breaths.
Just to acknowledge, Lola Rain came in. She did a lot better than I did, and she guessed 90. And Lola, you are welcome to put in another comment, maybe letting all of us know if you are somehow an advocate, an expert, a loved one, if you have connections in the dementia world, since you did a lot better on that guess. I wonder if people who have been through the trainings that you've been offering, Amanda, if they would be able to access that as a habit, something that they used if they themselves ended up with a brain change. I just wonder, I don't know if it would depend on the individual, I suppose. It's not really a question, it's a musing, really. And we can see, went to get my mom diagnosed. So she definitely is a loved one.
Hmm. Yeah, it's wow, Lola, that story is so true for so many people. There are so many really hard diagnosis stories. And like I said, often folks aren't even getting on the diagnosis train until 2 to 5 years into their journey of noticing some of these symptoms, because early symptoms, especially if it's not memory related, early symptoms can really mask as she's just tired. She's just hungry. This has just been a really big day. It only happens sometimes. It only happens at nighttime. We end up making actually quite a lot of excuses through the first 2 to 5 years of symptoms. So often people who are starting a diagnosis journey are starting it in the middle of the journey when it really couldn't be anything else. And that's what's so frustrating for people who do either in themselves recognize it early, or families who recognize it early, or friends who say, man, there's something going on. Often when we go to healthcare providers, because they're also not well trained in the art of dementia and understanding all these different 120 different types, causes, and forms, often it will sound like it could just be old age. You could just be tired. This could just be how it looks, because there isn't a treatment. And so starting someone, a lot of folks don't want to offer that piece of information. And so either I'll say it's time to start doing a huge neurological screen, or, oh yeah, it's probably MCI. Or with Lola, it's not memory related, it's probably not dementia. There's so many myths and misnomers out there about the diagnosis process that it can become, frankly, so disheartening that people just either give up or they do schedule that neurology appointment and it's 6 months to 2 years before I even get a diagnosis. So these are big amounts of time that people are living with. Could it be, might it be, I'm not sure what it is. And it's a pretty unaware community when it comes to dementia as a whole, because like I said, a lot of this is new. And yet there are some of us out there trying to share and help and support with specific symptoms. So we put in the chat, you can see that about dementia. There's the quiz that has a few more questions so you can see, gosh, what do I know about dementia? I think I know a lot about dementia. I've been doing this for a while. And yet some of the questions that TIPA puts together, we really don't have a lot of information going out about that. And so this is a good way for you to kind of start to really notice, what are some of the symptoms to look out for? What are some of the questions to start asking? And what else could it be? If it's not Alzheimer's, if it's not memory, what else should I be or could I be looking at to start to notice things like hallucinations or muscle motor issues that I didn't have before, or differences in how I choose to do things or eat or impulse control. And it's not really typical for me. Those are some of the pieces that we start to look at and really try to help people figure out. Maybe I'm looking at an atypical dementia. Maybe I'm looking at a delirium caused by a change in my medication. Maybe a new housing situation has caused me a lot of stress and distress and anxiety, and it's masking, and it might be looking like dementia. But if we don't start getting curious because we're too scared to look at it, often we will pick up the corner of the rug, sweep it under, sweep it under, sweep it under for so many years that by the time the mountain is so big that we're all tripping on it, it really couldn't be anything other than dementia. And so that's the piece that we're hoping to start to avoid by starting the conversation earlier.
I have a follow-up to that. So I think about this, after now that my mom was diagnosed, this may be in my future. And I've seen, since I got into this space in 2016, I've definitely seen improvements in the medical community, definitely much more awareness. But I'm still really confused when caregivers and people who are worried that this may be their future are running into just a brick wall with the medical community. And I'm wondering if maybe you can speak to, is that like an insurance thing? Like insurance wants you to go through every other little, is it B12 deficiency?
Well,
I mean,
Kitty,
what is
this is
going
such a
on?
good
Why aren't they
question.
catching up?
This is such a good question. Here's the problem. We are treating dementia like a medical condition, and it isn't. It's a life condition. And that's the biggest challenge when we go into a medical community asking for help. What's the treatment they can offer? There isn't one. What's the prevention they can offer? Oh, there's not one. So their hands feel a little bit tied. So unless there's an option, my tendency as a medical provider is to kind of either pass it along, hope it doesn't get worse, because what's the point? Me and my field and my profession, there's not a lot that I have been trained to do. And when we think about medical providers, even physicians, they're getting an hour throughout their entire course history, their entire schooling, an hour on dementia, depression, and delirium. Now tell me how much you can dive in for that. So if I don't know it, I'm not going to be able to then speak to it unless I personally really have a connection and dig deeper in my own time, which, as many of us here, don't have a lot of free time. And unless it's yours personally, you often don't spend the time because you don't have it, and we don't make it. And when we think about training and education, there really isn't. There isn't a standard of training and education when it comes to dementia. Often in even like long-term care, for example, it's pretty much staffed by people who are CNAs, which is the American version of certified nursing assistants. In Canada, it's PSWs. In England, it might be carers. These are licensed professionals, and they get hours of training to become licensed to care for another human being. If I were to ask you guys, on average, what's the average across the US? We'll just talk US because that's the number I have. What's the average across the US to get licensed as a certified nursing assistant for just their total program hours? What do you think? Any guesses?
It seems like I heard that because I thought about that last decade, and they said it was going to be, I don't know, a 2 or 3 month process, whatever that would be.
Sure.
Oh, did I guess right this time? Yay!
Yeah, you're on the right track. So the program can take as long as it's needed, but I saw a couple of people mouthing some numbers. I'll give it to you. It's 75. That's the minimum requirement of hours for a certified nursing assistant, somebody who's going to be coming into your home or working in long-term care to help care for your person. How many of those hours are dementia specific? 0. And even in a dementia specific location where there are hours of training required, any guesses on what type of training it can be? Video training is all that's required. So that's one issue in the whole medical community, Kitty, is that there's just not an emphasis put on practical skills demonstration at all. And for CNAs who do have 16 hours of clinical supervised hours, 75 hours total, that sounds like a lot. Until I looked up how many hours it takes for a fingernail technician in the US to become licensed. So what guesses do you have? So 75 for certified nursing assistants care for a whole other human's body. And also often they have to learn to make the bed and do the dishes and do things that would care for the home as well. 75 hours. Any guesses for fingernail technician?
180.
Higher.
Oh, wow.
300 to 400 hours. So if that doesn't tell you how we value the folks trying to do this work and how much we value the education and training around dementia, I don't know what else does. It is really an unfair situation for everyone. All of these medical providers are doing their best work, but without the education and training around these different types of dementias, without the education and training around what symptoms to notice, or even a tracker for families to fill out. We don't have anything agreed upon other than some pretty old school scales, tests that they can do, the MMSE being a great example, which measures a lot of things, but actually doesn't measure dementia at all, because it's really based on socioeconomic and educational status. And it doesn't compare me to me. And that's the biggest missing piece in our medical community, is that we don't have enough baseline screening education. We don't have enough agreed upon skills demonstration. And we're just not spending the time that it takes. We get told a lot of the time, oh, we don't have time to train them. We can't pull our staff off the floor to train. We can't cover that because we can't cover that time. And the part that makes us question is, well, what happens if you don't train them? Oh, we end up with aggressive behaviors that need to be treated medically for a condition that's not medical at all. And that's where we're at right now, is we're trying to fix the problem in a medical model when it's actually a life condition. And it generally impacts not just the one person, but at least 2 or 3 folks around. Because how many people have to give up a profession? How many people who are living with dementia have had to give up a profession or have been asked to step away from their profession? So it not only impacts our ability to have insurance, to use our medical, Medicare, Medicaid, all those pieces get impacted, but then so does my partners, so does my family, and so now it's become a model where even with the best of funding, there's not a lot of options, and the reimbursement for a dementia diagnosis is pretty low. So there's a lot of pieces that go into that one tiny little question that you asked, and man, it's frustrating. And until we can start to educate and promote positive conversations that physicians can start to have, we can't see them as the enemy because it's just in the wrong space right now. It's in the medical community, but we have to figure out how to help them bridge the gap over into the space of education and training and education for families and awareness about the conditions that these folks are living with. And it's a big hill right now.
I don't think we have.
Kitty, I'm gonna interrupt you because of time. That what was I thinking? This is a 2-hour show just to make scratch marks in this. And Patty, you've been so quiet. I would love to start with Patty to say to Lola, she is 2. She is a professional hired assistant carer, and she is a significant part of both parents' life right now. What do you offer? And we're right down to the end. So I'll simply say you can find it on agingbetternetwork.com. That's me. Patty, what about you? What is it and where can they find it? Oops, you're unmuted, but we cannot hear you. I'm going to let you work on that. Lorette, what about you? What do you provide and how do people find it?
So we are working on resourcing people with the literature and the art and the culture. So through adaptive, in my case, books that are, largely spiritual in nature, that have lots to do with nature, and poetry and the arts in modified formats that really inspire people and give them that catalyst for conversation with their care partners. You can reach me at nanasbookseries.com. And again, I am available to help people get a better sense, and we got a great sense out at PAC for our engagement leader certification about how to best use these materials in a variety of ways, in a variety of settings, really organically and meaningfully with people that are living with brain change and their communities of care and their families. So I will pass it over, I guess, to Nikki Jordan, who's doing something. We're doing it together, so something similar.
Oh, yeah, just really briefly, because I know we're cut for time. So, you can reach me, Nikki at miradormagazine.com. You can check us out at Mirador Magazine. We are a dementia inclusive and other brain change publication, stories, activities, things like that. And yes, working with Lorette as well as with Luke Gilligan from Resense Register, putting together these sort of elevated publication resources for people. And yeah, learning, it was amazing actually to watch Amanda in particular use our resources to the best of their ability. It was phenomenal. And it's really, we're working on our next series of magazines. We're excited about that. And then using some of those tools that we learned at PAC actually in these next issues to make them even better for our readers. So yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Yay. Patty, give it a try again. Still not. That's crazy because when you first came in, we could hear you. Oh, phooey. Kitty Norton. Lickety grits.
I'm a former family caregiver, and I've made a documentary about dementia family caregivers, and it's called Wine, Women, and Dementia. And like you said, Amanda, there is a lot of life on the end of life journey. And I wanted people to know that. And I wanted people to see this journey through the family caregiver. It's coming out on PBS in November. So yeah, so pretty excited about that. People can go to winewomenanddementia.com and catch up on the airings that we already know are confirmed, and it'll be on the PBS app starting November 2nd. So
Awesome. Laura.
Thanks. Yeah, and Patty and I work together quite a bit at abcdementia.org, which is our ABC Dementia course and community. It's a support and learning community for family caregivers of people with dementia. We do caregiver coaching and events, support groups, and curating resources. And just like Amanda was saying, about, if only I knew that, we endeavor to really just like, here's the stuff you would ask for if you knew to ask for it. And we just do that through conversation of, hey, what's going on with you? Oh, did you know about this, this, and that? So we talk about learning the language, the heart-centered language of dementia care. The ABC stands for Appreciating Behavioral Communication. So we focus on translating that to uncover people's needs, because we all feel and function so much better when our needs are met. So.
Laura, can you be the voice of Patty, your friend, your co-author on Brick by Brick Bonding? Because we did that with her in Independence, Oregon. Oh,
Brick by Brick Bonding is awesome. That's something that Patty developed, and I was just so enthusiastic about. Basically, essentially, it's using Lego bricks and pieces as a medium for art therapy. So it's a great way to help people with dementia be able to express themselves without words. Of course, there's all kinds of benefits to, fine motor control and being able to, autonomy and choice, and just all these benefits packed into it. And for the care partner as well, just setting aside this, whether it's 5 minutes or 45 minutes of like, let's just have this moment of mindfulness together and forget all the things that we need to do and we wish we're different and whatnot. And right now we just want a blue piece, and we just want to connected with a green piece, and that's success.
Wonderful. Kitty, Laura, Lorette, Nikki, Patty have all been on Aspects of Aging before. You can find them at agingbetternetwork.com when you go to /live. Amanda, in 10 seconds, we just want to say, yay, Amanda, good job. Woo!
Thank you. Thank
It's a
you.
wonderful hour. Thank you.
No, thank you for having me. This has been so fun. Oh, what a great group.
Yay. Yeah. I like it when we're all